Welcome to Horror Melee,
a podcast born of a group of people who love to talk and debate horror.
Every episode, one of us picks a movie to review, and the rest of us must either suffer or enjoy that pick.
Turn your brain off
and enjoy. Welcome to Horror Melee. On this episode, we have our usual host, Holly.
Hello.
And Patrick.
I'm the Hessian. I'm Christopher Walken in this movie.
Roar! Roar!
It's his only line.
And if you fun listeners don't recognize that, roar! We're talking about 1999's Sleepy Hollow. This was a fan pick for a fun Halloween episode, and the fan is Holly's friend, Eric.
Hi,
Thanks
Eric.
for the pick, Eric.
Eric has no last name.
Nope. Like Cher.
Just Eric. Sleepy Hollow was directed by Tim Burton, inspired by the Washington Irving story, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. And it stars Johnny Depp, Christina Ricci, Miranda Richardson, all the classic horror dads, and the Headless Horseman himself, Christopher Walken.
He had the easiest lines in this movie.
Sure.
I could have played the Headless Hessian.
So, Sleepy Hollow, what a classic spooky Halloween story. Did anybody read Washington Irving's story?
No.
I have. I have when I was younger, so I have not in a very long time. But I definitely grew up watching the Disney cartoon.
Yeah, I watched
Yes,
the Disney
Holly.
cartoon for sure.
I mean, that was on like repeat. I'm pretty sure my mom taped that for me and I watched it nonstop every Halloween.
Me too.
I watched it a few times. It wasn't like a big household thing for me, but it was good. I also grew up in a religious family, so I don't know if that had to do with anything. But
My parents loved celebrating Halloween, and my mom was a textile major and wanted to design costumes for Disney, so she made us the most amazing Halloween costumes every year.
wow, we got candies from Jesus. Yeah.
And I was in the middle. I had some okay homemade costumes, and I got the fun trick-or-treating. Yeah.
When my mom finally let us go trick-or-treating and stuff, and we stopped doing this, like, the weird candy for Jesus thing, I think I was Batman every year.
Yes.
When my sister and my brother were headed out to go trick-or-treating, I demanded that I get to join them, and my mom didn't have like a fancy costume for me, so she dressed me up as like a bag lady. And I don't even know like what that is. It's like a homeless person in the 80s. Is that like a nice way to like,
Pretty much, yeah.
I just think of like the lady in Home Alone.
Yes. Yeah.
The pigeon lady.
The pigeon lady.
Yeah. This is like before Home Alone came out, but like a bag lady like that. So that was my first Halloween costume. Patrick was Batman 10 years straight.
Yeah.
I know my absolute favorite was, well, one of my favorites was being Princess Jasmine, because my hair was long enough that I could do her hair like in the movie. So that was pretty darn cool, and I felt pretty proud of myself.
I could see you killing it as Princess Jasmine.
Yeah, it was a pretty good costume.
Yeah, it's a really good costume.
So Sleepy Hollow. I definitely saw this. I'm pretty sure I rented it when it came out. I don't think I saw it in the theaters, although maybe I did. But obviously, like, I don't imagine this was everyone's first time watching it, right?
No.
Patrick, you've seen this before, right?
Oh, yeah, I watched this
Yeah.
all the time when I was younger. I shouldn't say all the time, but we did have it on VHS, and I did watch it quite a bit.
Yeah, I remember renting it quite often, and one of my friends who wasn't too into scary movies, I remember showing this to her and she was like, "Why are you so weird?" but it's like a classic story. It's just a little darker.
I love Sleepy Hollow, and I've like been to Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, like when I moved to New York, the first thing I was like, I'm taking a train ride up to Sleepy Hollow. I'm forcing my friend to come with me. We are going to do a spooky lantern graveyard tour, and it's going to be amazing. And it was really cool, but it's really hard to get around Sleepy Hollow without a car. So we did a lot of weird walking. Yeah. But it was absolutely beautiful. I really miss upstate New York in the fall because Texas doesn't have fall colors.
Yeah.
And upstate New York is like completely unreal at how picturesque and beautiful it is in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not real.
Yeah.
That those like the colors and the sun and the golden light, it just, the way it hits everything, it's hard to think that this is real. It's not like I'm on a movie set and someone created this. It's like, no, this is like normal nature fall in upstate New York.
That's awesome. As much as I hate feeling it getting colder, I do like the leaves changing the colors. And there's this tree outside of our office building, and I swear, like throughout the day, it just like went from half like red leaves, and throughout the day, it just like completely changed to like full red leaves, and it was so pretty.
It was 92 today in Austin.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I was like, what is time? I don't know. It feels like it's June, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would love to be somewhere where I can be warm all the time, but I like the season changes.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us about what you love about fall? Do you even like fall, Patrick?
It is my second favorite season. Because I am a spring baby, so I love spring. But fall is my second favorite season. Mainly because I like cooler weather, and I love seeing the leaves change. But I also grew up in a desert, so we don't get a lot of that. We get the cooler weather, but a palm tree is going to stay the same color the entire year.
Patrick, stop painting palm trees.
Yeah. But I do. It's one of my favorite seasons. I absolutely love the crisp smell in the air, and I love the idea of like there's a lot of holidays during this time where it's like family oriented. Except Halloween is definitely a family holiday in my eyes. Even if you're getting together with friends and stuff, like. So I like that, where the summer doesn't really have that much, right? And it gets fucking hot in the summer. So I'm all about that fall.
Hells yeah, man. So this movie, Sleepy Hollow, Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow, let's talk about a little bit about the production behind it. I was so surprised to find out that this wasn't an initial Tim Burton project.
Who was it initially by?
So, according to Wikipedia, in 1993, Kevin Yeager, a makeup effects designer who had turned to directing with Tales from the Crypt, had the notion to adapt Washington Irving's short story, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, into a feature film. Through his agent, Yeager was introduced to Andrew Kevin Walker, and they spent some time to transform Ichabod Crane from a schoolmaster to a New York City detective. They pitched Sleepy Hollow to a few studios, eventually securing a deal with producer Scott Rudin, and then Rudin optioned the project to Paramount Pictures, and they decided on a deal where Yeager was set to direct with Walker scripting. And I'm sorry, Kevin Yeager, if I'm pronouncing your last name incorrectly.
Yeah, he's actually a huge fan of the show, so you should definitely.
I'm gonna say Yeager. Sorry. So Yeager had planned Sleepy Hollow as a low-budget production, a quote pretentious slasher film with a spectacular murder every 5 minutes.
What?
I know, right? Like, that's not at all what this movie is.
Would Christopher Walken still be doing what he's doing in this movie?
Paramount clearly disagreed on that concept and demoted Yeager's involvement to prosthetic makeup designer. So then eventually Tim Burton was brought on, and Francis Ford Coppola was also had a role, minimal production duties, but only during the editing process. And I guess Tim Burton didn't even know Coppola was involved until after like the editing.
Yeah, what did Coppola do? Did he just go in there and like shove popcorn in his mouth and drink his own wine and just be like, "This is great, keep it."
He was like, that scene right there, that one.
Yeah, perfect.
I really hope that's what happened.
For some reason, it's escaping me what he looks like, but I'm just imagining him being like really fucking fat and wearing like an ascot. Just
hey, the Sofia Coppola makes like a pink champagne that's absolutely delicious.
Yeah, I like the Coppola wine.
Mm-hmm.
So furthermore, upon like reading Wikipedia, Tim Burton had never really done horror, which I'm like, all of his stuff is like macabre.
Mm-hmm.
He's quoted as saying, "I had never really done something that was more of a horror film." And it's funny because those are the kind of movies that I like probably more than any other genre. So he definitely used Hammer Film Productions and Black Sunday as influence. I mean, you had like Christopher Lee in the very beginning of this, who's like a classic horror actor.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there is just like classic horror dripping all over this.
Yeah, but it's so funny too because this movie obviously has horror aspects and is considered a horror movie, but because of the way Tim Burton directs and does like his set production and stuff like that, it's like most of his movies have such a fairy tale. It's not part of this real world. That's what I love about his movies, because a lot of films lose that nowadays, where it's like, this is a movie, like, I want to take you to another kind of place, take you to this fairy tale world. So that aspect of the movie kind of diminished like the horror part of it, right? It because it made it feel dreamlike and fake, so you obviously knew it was fake.
Yeah.
But he does that in all his movies.
Yeah, you're right. I was actually looking at his filmography because I feel like when you think Tim Burton, you think horror movies.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's not horror. It's dark. It's macabre because looking at his IMDb, he had the Frankenweenie short, and then he did Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Then Beetlejuice, which is really a comedy, not a horror movie. It's a black comedy. Then there's Batman and Edward Scissorhands, which again it's not really horror. It has these dark themes to it. And then Batman Returns, Ed Wood, Mars Attacks, again more comedic.
Love that movie.
I know, right? I live in the neighborhood of Chicago that I live in. We have a lot of murals on the sides of buildings, and I just drove past one today, and they had a couple of the aliens from Mars Attacks on there.
It's amazing.
Yeah. But yeah, after Mars Attacks, it was Sleepy Hollow. So yeah, it's just interesting to really take a look at it and say, like you're right, those aren't horror movies. He does fairy tales. That's what he does. And
one thing, nowadays, Tim Burton, he's in bed with Disney, and who isn't in bed with Disney? So he kind of loses.
Well, he started as an animator at Disney.
Yeah, right. But like what Disney is now compared to what Disney was it's so different. His movies, when he made movies, obviously he wanted to make money from his movies, but you get a sense in all his movies that he really enjoyed making this movie. His heart went into it, into these crazy little sets, and like he was a part of everything. And now he's gone a lot towards the CGI in his newer films.
Yeah.
And I just think the love is like gone. Now it's a paycheck almost.
I have this amazing book. It's pretty thick. It's The Art of Tim Burton. I was reading somewhere, it was an interview that was saying that he always has like a tiny little sketch pad and a pencil with him, and he's constantly drawing. Like if he's at a restaurant, he'll draw little caricatures of people. And looking through this book, it's all of the art of these ideas of like, Jack Skellington is in there, like his original ideas, and they are just very personal. And then seeing all of these other like everyday drawings just to keep his skill up, they're just so, I don't know. I've always been so captivated by his art because it's so different and whimsical, and it's like a fairy tale, but it's also you can tell that it means something to him. It's very personal.
Yeah.
And that's something that I always loved about his movies is you can see, like, if you see interviews with him and you know more about him, you see that he's making these movies, that he's just telling his story, and he's putting himself into these characters, and it just comes through in a different way that I don't see. Yeah, you're right. I don't see that now in his movies.
But maybe because a lot of the movies that he's doing now, they're not his stories.
That's true.
They're remakes, and he's trying to put himself into that remake, which it just doesn't work.
I mean, they look pretty, they look good, there's good actors and everything, but they're not his films.
That is why I was so surprised to learn that this wasn't like a project that he was involved in from the very beginning, because this project, I feel like, screamed Tim Burton. I mean, the story of Sleepy Hollow is so gothic and spooky, and this made so much sense. And then obviously you have Johnny Depp and Christina Ricci.
She was so young in this.
Yeah. I can't believe that originally this was going to be a low budget slasher, and like what it turned out to be is like, thank God. This is like, I have a greater appreciation for it. Another little interesting tidbit, Paramount required Tim Burton to consider Brad Pitt as Ichabod Crane, Liam Neeson, and Daniel Day-Lewis.
Oh my God, Daniel Day-Lewis would have been amazing. Imagine him as Ichabod Crane, but Gangs of New York style. Fucking amazing.
I will say, like, when I saw this movie, I enjoyed it. Like, the first time I saw this, and I totally bought this on VHS, but when I moved from New York down to Texas and I got rid of a bunch of VHS tapes, which I'm like, why did I do that?
Same.
This definitely didn't make the cut. I know. I thought I kept it, but I didn't. Like, watching it now to prepare for this episode, I was like, this is actually a really solid movie. It encapsulates overcast, spooky upstate New York, even though it wasn't filmed in New York. It was actually it actually ended up getting filmed in the UK.
I know. Hey, we need to make this look like New York, and upstate New York is pretty. We can go there. Nah, let's go to London. Let's do it in London.
I mean, I read that they tried to film in New York, and then they tried to film in Massachusetts, but they couldn't, get the...
They also, another reason why they moved it to the UK was there's a massive sound studio there, and so all the forest scenes are actually done in a sound studio, so they built all that forest.
Yeah, so it's so interesting to learn about how this movie came to be, because you just have so many classic Tim Burton characters in here.
Yeah. Even though they're not his, necessarily his characters, he was able to really make them his own.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things that I had read was that Johnny Depp wanted to have prosthetics so that he could look more like how Ichabod is described, and more ugly and just very unattractive.
The big ears.
Yeah, so that's how Johnny Depp wanted to do it, but Tim Burton was like, no, I want all of his awkwardness and just his being off-putting to people to come through from his character. I don't want anything visual to be going on. I want to see you bring all that out of him. And Johnny Depp is the perfect person to do that. He's just such a great chameleon. He just fits into every role.
Good Rango reference right there. It's funny, I watched an interview with Christina Ricci about her talking about like how Ichabod Crane is, this ugly human, this is just like this ugly man. And then she's like, and then you got Johnny, and Johnny's, Johnny's fucking good looking.
I'm okay that they kept Johnny Depp as his however he looks,
Yeah, especially because they did throw in a bit of that love story there too, so it made it easier, I think, for the emotion to come through. I think with some prosthetics, it would be a little more difficult, and it just wouldn't really fit with how the rest of it looked.
Yeah.
And what is it? What is with back in, the 1800s, 1700s? People just fell in love in like 3 days. And
because they died when they were 30, Patrick, okay?
Yeah.
People had short lives. They had to make babies and get the fuck out of there.
Like, she literally played some weird kissing game, which that's, I guess, what they did back in the day. And then she was just like, oh, I love you.
Aw, he was bewitched by her.
Aww.
I will say, I'm glad that it wasn't as strong of a subplot. It didn't take away from like the main story, which I hate it when like a love thing, and it didn't distract him from his job, which I really liked.
Yes.
I rewatched the Disney version, and man, they really lay on that Katrina Van Tassel, right?
Yeah.
Is like this hot chick that all the guys just fawn over, and all she does is bat her lashes. But that was not the Katrina that was portrayed in the Tim Burton version, and I was very grateful for that.
Me too.
All I imagine is in like the Billy Madison scene with Chris Farley is like, that Veronica.
All of the, well, how many women were in this really? 2? They both kicked ass.
Yeah.
Well, you had Katrina, you had the stepmom.
Yeah.
You had the midwife. She was kind of there.
And Johnny's mom, or Ichabod's mom.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ichabod's mom.
Yeah, they were all very they did their own thing. They followed their heart. And yeah, I enjoy. That's another thing that I like about Tim Burton is he doesn't make characters that are objectified.
I will say that the scene of Ichabod's mom with the camera over her and her boobs boobing out.
That is true.
That was a little too much. I was like, come on.
There was multiple scenes of that because you have Ichabod's mom, and then you have the stepmom when the Hessian's is trying to kill the dad, and she's like picking the flowers, and she's like sitting there, and she's just like, oh, let me grab these flowers.
Yeah. I mean, I get like, maybe that was the fashion back then, but I'm like, but was it the fashion back then?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, of course, that's a big thing.
Yeah.
Man, and we've talked about so much. I mean, we're already into the movie. Should we jump into the movie?
Yeah. Let's head down to Sleepy Hollow.
So, as we had mentioned, the story does differ from the Washington Irving story, where Ichabod is not a school teacher from Connecticut. Rather, he is a constable from New York. And he is a man of science and I believe considered a forensic pathologist.
Yeah, like, because he does autopsies. So I was like, okay. Like, if in modern day, he'd be like Dana Scully.
Yeah.
Could you imagine Ichabod Crane in like the CSI shows, like CSI Miami, just dressed as he is?
And that's another thing that I find fascinating, that this isn't an original like Tim Burton idea, because Tim Burton having like the contraptions for Ichabod to wear, like his little case that he pulls out when he makes his way up to Sleepy Hollow, and they encounters a fresh dead body from the Headless Horseman. and he pulls out of his medicine bag like a whole collapsible shelving unit of chemicals and powders, and then glasses that are contraptions.
Very steampunk, yeah.
That bag where he pulls up and it's got all the vials of powder, that was just Johnny Depp's personal cocaine bag.
Hey, can we use that for a scene?
Yeah.
Rewinding to when the classic opening scene of, ooh, there's a will, or there's something being written and it's being sealed, and there's a person in a horse-drawn carriage, and the Headless Horseman is coming up from behind them, and heads are being dropped. There's a cornfield. It's like Halloween. Let's do this.
You know what makes that like whole opening scene even better and like really sets the tone for the movie, which a lot of movies tend not to do that much, was Danny Elfman's score.
Oh my
for this.
God, yes.
Like big trumpets and the horns, like it feels fake and it works so well with this movie.
Yeah.
And imagine like a Hans Zimmer score with this.
Yeah.
It wouldn't work.
It's, man, like my holy trinity of movies has always been Tim Burton, Danny Elfman, and Colleen Atwood. And when you put them together to make a movie, it's going to be amazing.
Imagine Danny Elfman still just working with Tim Burton on all his movies, but he did a movie recently and it did not sound like his typical Danny Elfman.
Really?
Oingo Boingo self.
Yeah.
Just like, it was like a drama. He did a drama, which was good for you for branching out, Danny Elfman.
I do have to say though, in the very beginning, who is it? The guy who dies in the very beginning.
Yes, Van Garrett. I know. I was like, Van Garrett,
I know,
Van Tassel, why do they
Van
got to be so
Garrett,
close,
Right?
They're all
but
bitch.
anyway, it's he's played by Martin Landau, and he's uncredited in this role just because, he's in it for like 30 seconds. But I just thought it was so funny to see him because right now I'm doing a rewatch of Buffy the Vampire Slayer with my friend Eric. And I just saw an episode with Juliet Landau, his daughter, who plays Drusilla. And she was always one of my favorite baddies.
Drusilla always bothered me because she was like, oh, I'm like in a different world over here. Shall we do this? Yeah, she's like extreme, just in the clouds. Yeah. But going back to the score and Danny Elfman, I totally agree. It totally works. I love the humor in it, but I think that's another reason why it doesn't feel like a quote unquote horror movie. Yeah. It's too whimsical.
Yeah.
That's the word.
But I love it. I mean, I'm not saying that as a bad thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I love it.
Yeah.
So after the opening scene, we cut to New York, or you see Ichabod Crane, and you see him dealing with the justice system. I don't know, like the police force of 1799 New York City. And they bring in a body and they're like, burn him, and Johnny, Ichabod's like, no, wait, we got to check it out. Like he might not be drowning. And he kind of rolls his eyes. They bring in another body and they're like, what is he here for? Oh, robbery. You're like, great. Throw him in the hole. And then Ichabod's like, no, I need to like do an autopsy. And the guy's like, oh, cut a body open. Like, what are we, heathens? And It's like,
It's just funny.
yes, you are,
Yeah.
because you're like, burn that body, throw that body down the hole. No, you can't cut that open. Like,
Exactly.
that just sets the whole tone for the whole movie.
Yep. Yeah, and it's that like questioning what you've been told. That's a theme that I really love about Tim Burton's movies. It's that underbelly layer of what's going on underneath that everybody just kind of glosses over. And there's, that one person that's like, like wants to like take a look at it and like really dissect like what's going on and question things. And I love that about his movies.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I never put two and two together, Holly.
Yeah.
When you said underbelly, though, I was just like imagining pork belly. And I agree with you on a lot of his movies. Not so much the newer ones.
Yeah.
So then we find Ichabod in a courtroom, which I don't know what's happening. There's a guy who's in an Iron Maiden, but is Ichabod trying to prevent that? Because I love that they're like,
the millennium is almost upon us. In a few months, we will be living in the 19th century. Yet our courts continue to rely on medieval devices of torture.
Stand down!
I stand up for sense and justice. Our jails overflow with men and women convicted on confessions worth no more than this one.
Ichabod Crane.
Yeah.
so many little lines like that. I was like, oh, that's so funny. Just so many play on words. It's so fun.
Yeah.
And then in this courtroom, we learn that Ichabod is like, no, we need to like, use science to get evidence and determine if, these criminals are actually criminals and find out what actually happened. And the presiding judge is horror icon Christopher Lee.
Yeah.
Naturally, I love the camera angle of Christopher Lee with the eagle in the background, and he has these black wings behind him. He's like this beautiful dark angel. And Christopher Lee's like, okay, Ichabod, we're going to send you upstate to go check out these murders so you can test your forensic science on finding a murderer. And then we're in beautiful Sleepy Hollow. I really just love that, like, Martin Landau and Christopher Lee and all these horror dads are in this.
Oh yeah, and Michael Gough, who was Alfred in Batman Returns. He's another Tim Burton family member. He came out of retirement for this movie.
I still can't believe this was not an original like Tim Burton project, because this just like makes so much sense that he did this.
Yeah, I'm happy he did it. I feel like if this was made into a true horror film, like slasher film, it would not be that great.
No.
This whole twist that he took it with and just made it more like, yeah, it's a horror movie, but it's like a horror comedy almost, but not like a horror comedy where it's just a really bad horror movie. Like there's a lot of like just comedic parts to it, and it's just like over the top. I'm really happy it was not hardcore horror.
Yeah, right. All right, so Ichabod makes his way to Sleepy Hollow, and
making his way downtown. He's walking fast. He's homebound.
And he ends up at the Van Tassels.
That was a really cool house.
Yeah.
Okay, that's like the kind of Halloween party I want to go to. They had like 100 cool like really well done carved pumpkins, just candles everywhere, getting weird, putting blindfolds
kissing
on.
Game.
Yeah, like
I bet the food was bland though.
So Ichabod gets a smooch from Katrina. We're introduced to Katrina, who's way more chill than a Disney version Katrina. I love that she's spooky. I actually liked that she had like this weird blonde hair and these like weird blonde eyebrows, especially for Christina Ricci, who's always been super dark.
Dark, yeah.
She was 18 during the filming of this. She was so
Really?
young. Yeah.
Yeah.
Johnny Depp was 33. Quite a big gap of age difference there with these two.
Wow.
Yeah, I saw an interview. She said it was weird being his love interest because she had grown up knowing him.
Well, they played it off well.
They did.
It's funny. So did any of you guys watch the making of the documentary on this?
Yes.
Okay. Johnny Depp's interview, he's the most monotone individual.
Right?
Yeah, it was fun working with Christina. She's a great actress. Tim Burton's a pretty funny guy. He likes to add humor into the movies. Johnny, did you have a good time? I had a wonderful time. It's just so monotone
It
every
really is.
interview. Or he's just coming down from that coke habit from on set with the bag.
The whole town is on alert about this Headless Horseman. They know the story. They tell the story to Ichabod Crane. Ichabod Crane is like, pretty sure it's a human, don't need to slam your Bible like on the table next to me. Calm down. As I'm like recounting this, everybody in this movie does such a good job, and all the little like nuances and looks and shrugs, like everything just totally worked. I gotta say, like, it was such an enjoyable movie to rewatch. Like, I didn't think I was gonna enjoy rewatching it as much as I did.
Something this movie did really well that I think Tim Burton does a lot in his movies, and everything feels like it could have been on a stage. Like, your characters are characters, they're not real people. Like, you're still involved with it, but like, this could have been on a stage, and it's like more theatrical than the typical movies, which I like. That scene with all the five guys, just even the way they're standing and sitting in the room, it's like like they were on a stage talking to one another, facing the audience.
Yeah, and the way they like, even like their looks at one another and their like mannerisms, and gosh, again,
when they would look at each other, and when they would stand all huddled together, I'm like, ooh, those shady five, there's some stuff going on. Like, it's very palpable. Like, it doesn't need to be spelled out for you. It's you just need a little glimpse, and it's like, okay, I understand what's going on from their body language, and you don't get that a lot in movies.
Not because everyone's trying to be so real nowadays with their movies. Like, even comic book movies are trying to be so fucking real, and it's like, dude, you fucking fly. You don't need to be. You're like, everything's just trying to be more real. We need to relate with the audience, and sometimes, I want just a character. I want it to be like, this movie did a great job with that.
Yeah, and every single spooky scene was so nicely spooky. So there's a guy in a watchtower, and he's on the watch for the Headless Horseman, and you could tell, like, ooh, something's coming. Like, the way the wind, so there's like an eerie fog that puts out the fire, the tiki torches, and then you see deer run, and then Headless Horseman comes. Yeah,
all those fake CGI deer just running through the forest.
Whatever, it worked. It looked great.
It's so funny in the making of, anytime they talked about CGI and they showed the computers, I was like, wow, we've come a long way since 1999.
Yeah, that was 20 years ago.
So it's the 20th anniversary of Sleepy Hollow?
Yeah, it's coming up in November.
Yep.
This movie came out in November?
I know, that was another thing. Like, it came out November 21st. I was like, but this is like a Halloween movie.
Good old Thanksgiving movie.
Yeah, right. Starring pumpkins.
Taking the family to see Sleepy Hollow this Thanksgiving.
Anyway, Ichabod Crane gets a little sidekick whose dad died. I love that little sidekick.
Oh, the little boy who just like is there to be like, okay, we need to move the story along. Say something, little kid.
He's adorable. Young Mazbeth.
Every part that he has like a speaking lines in, it's just there to move them to the next scene.
It worked. I don't care. I love
it. It worked. Yeah, it worked.
One thing that I didn't mind and actually enjoyed are how many times Johnny Depp or Ichabod Crane got blood squirted at him.
Yes.
And like unnecessarily too.
Absolutely.
Like, totally did not need like the first body they find, and he sees like a critter crawl out, and he's like, oh. And then the autopsy on the dead widow's body, like covered in blood.
A dead body would not bleed that much, but I'm okay with it.
I know, right?
The blood would be like watery and just like
it'd be like all pooled like at the bottom, like
Yeah.
in her back and everything. But
Yeah. And then like at the dead tree, like just blood squirting. And I loved like at the dead tree, it looked like he ate like a chunk of bark because it was all around his mouth. I was like, that doesn't look right. It should be all over you if it's squirting on you, not just focused around your mouth like you just ate the dead tree.
oh, could you imagine? You're just like, oh, this bark looks tasty. Pull it back, you start eating, there's just human heads in there. Oh, such flavor. My favorite part of the movie is when they tell the story of the Hessian and it does the flashback of him going through the battles, right? Just killing people. Because even alive, the Headless Horseman still only screamed. He only screamed. He never knew any other words. I take that back. He did go, shh. He did say that to someone.
And he kind of had a little like low when he was petting his horse. I was like, "Aw, he loves his little horse."
Okay, I gotta say, he loved his horse, and his horse also had like ketchup blood.
But fun
Yep.
fact, Christopher Walken is scared of horses and only rode an animatronic horse through the entire movie.
Yes. That was really cool. I was watching that making of documentary, and that the mechanics that they used, it was the same thing that they used for Elizabeth Taylor in National Velvet. And it's really cool how they did it. They just had this like skeleton of the horse that moves, and they just built the horse on top of it. Like they put the fabric and everything, and they molded the head, and they were able to do the animatronics to like make the eyes, the ears, and the nose move and everything, and then you just sat on top of it.
I was actually really surprised how many animatronics they used in this movie. Because even the scene where the fat guy gets his head cut off and like rolls in front of Johnny Depp, that was animatronic too. That whole body that fell, that was animatronic body, which was really cool.
That was
cool.
animatronic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang.
I thought it was gonna be like CGI or just some guy with a little suit on that fell, but no, it's a little. They spent the money to build a robot to get decapitated.
I think that's because when I was watching this, I was like, man, these effects minus some of the CGI, like obvious CGI things, these effects hold up so well, and I think it's because they made it and it's animatronic. They made it to look as real as possible rather than relying on computers that will eventually age, and we'll get further along with CGI and everything. It's like, oh yeah, I can see how that's it's CGI, but it just looks so, I don't know, it's just so realistic, and they just did such a good job.
They did. They really did. Even I was so glad they included this of Ichabod Crane being spooked, crossing the covered bridge, and the frogs are like, Ichabod.
Headless Horseman.
Yeah. And then the Headless Horseman shows up, or what he thinks is the Headless Horseman, and the Headless Horseman chases him and with a fiery pumpkin throws it at Ichabod. Obviously, the way it's thrown, it's like directed like a missile, so that looks not real. But after rewatching the Disney, that is exactly how it looks in the Disney version. So I was like, wow, thank you for literally recreating that, because that's like the best. That's like the scene.
Yes.
Like every time I watch it, I was like, that's the scene I want to see. They brought the scene to this movie. And again, I feel like I'm so grateful for everything they did in this movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, they knew how to please the crowd.
Hells yeah. Their budget was $70 to $100 million, probably closer to $100 million. Opening weekend, they made about $30 million, and worldwide gross was around $207 million. So
they made profit.
Yeah, they definitely made their money. And Sleepy Hollow won the Academy Award for Best Art Direction.
Yes.
Nice.
So they, again, going back to how this movie started as a low budget slasher and where it ended is so amazing.
I love the song that plays anytime he sees his mother in the movie.
Yeah.
Okay, what did you guys think about that subplot of his mom?
You know, I don't
was
think
okay
it
with
was. Yeah, I don't think it was necessary at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It didn't really add much. The only thing that it helped was getting a little more insight into Ichabod's character.
Yeah.
But I don't know how necessary it was really to throw in that whole thing in order to get there. And because you could have just used his empathy with Katrina. You didn't have to show like, oh, he understands because his mom was the same way.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm not really mad about it because hey, I get to watch Lisa Marie, so
Right.
not angry about it.
I'm no doctor, but those wounds on his hand would have healed up much differently than just
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
looking like he's the bottom of a pizza that they rolled over with one of those spiky things.
Yeah, that I was like, oh, pretty sure they wouldn't be like holes in your hands.
Yeah.
Like,
It's like he was like, it's like if instead of Jesus getting a nail through the hand, he got one. He just got one of those things. You put your hand in and it like does the outline of your hand, and he just pushed it a little too hard. That's what it looked like.
yeah, yes, I agree. It wasn't needed, but I liked how, I guess, his dad, who was the crazy religious person who put his mom eventually into an Iron Maiden, just makes me think of like Bill and Ted's like Iron Maiden. How his dad, like, especially when he walked, it just looked like Phantasm.
Oh yeah.
Especially with like the white.
It looked like, to me, I kept getting the vibe of Alan Rickman from Hunchback of Notre Dame, the cartoon version. That's all I could think of when I saw him.
Yeah, and again, like, I don't know, like, it helps to flesh out why he is so enthralled with science, because seeing his father be like so, quote, religious, and then having all these torture devices and ultimately killing his mother, he's like, okay, well, if this is what religion is, I don't want any part of it, so I'm gonna go put my faith into science. Like, I get it, but I feel like it could have been done a little more eloquently and not having to do flashbacks, but again, not mad about it.
I think, though, since, this story is already a written story and there's already been movies made out about it, this was Tim Burton able to throw in his own character, his own little twist and idea to it. Which, the movie's almost 2 hours, and it could have been an hour and a half, but, taking all those cutscenes out would have done that.
Yes.
But, Francis Ford Coppola's just in there eating that popcorn, tell him to keep in these scenes.
I love the scene where Ichabod is talking it out, like, what's happening with young Maspeth, and as he's writing in the book, he's writing keywords down, and then you, like, at the end see that everything points to Balthus.
Yeah.
I really like that scene. I thought it was just smart and really shows the funny fairy tale like side.
It's another thing that I think could have been taken out completely, because we talked about it and we were like, oh yeah, it's a subplot. The whole relationship with him and Katrina. That scene where the whole Archer in the house thing, where it's like, oh, our house burned down, and the Archer and all that. So her little subplot, like her character development, was really boring.
It is.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you guys, like, what did you think of Christina Ricci's, I don't know, quote unquote accent that she had? Like,
I feel like it comes and goes.
Yeah.
Like in the very beginning, like when she gave him the book, she was like, oh, should I show you? But then it like you said, it came and went.
Yeah.
But like we were talking earlier, how, this is almost could have been like a stage. She was trying to bring, the feel of your local library putting this on. That's what she was trying to convey.
Is Christina Ricci a good actress? Because she's not, she's doing a decent job, but I'm like, compared to everybody else in here, and I don't know, maybe because she was playing, she was acting with some heavy hitters.
Yeah, for sure.
I like her, but I've never thought she was a good actress.
Yeah.
I could defend that.
I'm never mad if she's in something, but I'm
Right.
always like, you're the weakest link in this entire thing.
I absolutely love that Miranda Richardson, she's in this movie so little, but she completely steals every scene that she is in.
Mhm.
I love watching her in this.
Oh,
Except for one scene where she's with Christopher Walken, because his dialogue is so brilliant when they're on that horse together. He takes the cake.
After that delicious blood kiss, back to hell.
And we're cutting to like pretty much the end, where we find out that, surprise, it's the stepmom, and the stepmom used to live on the premises, and her last name is Archer, which is why Katrina's like, oh, the Archer in the back of the fire hearth, Oh, it's their house.
I think you just nailed her accent, where you don't, when you speak, you really don't move your tongue.
I was like, just stop, okay? Like, Johnny Depp isn't wearing prosthetics. Don't do an accent, okay? Just be you.
And the accent she's trying to do is like kind of English, but the whole time you talk about how your family's Dutch. So, I don't know.
This land we're looking at was Van Garrett land, given to my father when I was in swaddling clothes. The Van Garretts were the richest family around these parts. When my father brought us to Sleepy Hollow, Van Garrett set him up with an acre and a broken-down cottage. My father worked hard for his family, and prospered, and built this house. And I owe my happiness to him.
Every time she talked, I kind of zoned out. I was like, oh, I can't listen to this. But we find out the stepmom, who was the nurse, surprise, surprise, killed the mom to seek revenge for the Van Garretts and the Van Tassels for like screwing them over because their parents were servants. And they got kicked out and they had to become witches.
Man, I have to become a witch.
I mean, hey, you gotta survive.
I
Right?
don't want this 9 to 5, but I gotta do it. I gotta do it.
And she's the one who's been directing the Headless Horseman on Who to Kill. And she gave her soul. And when the Headless Horseman got his head back, he collected her soul / his bride.
Also, so what did you guys think of the choice to have his teeth shaved down to look like a shark?
Hey, I'm for it.
Yeah.
Is that why he couldn't talk at all in the movie? You know how painful it would be to shave your teeth down like that?
Right?
Your teeth have nerves.
Yeah.
So there's a big scene at the church. Everyone's in the church. The Headless Horseman can't get into the church. It's hallowed ground.
That church scene, though, where he rips him through the window, was fucking great.
So good. Just the tension in that whole scene was really great. Because everybody's like, stuff is starting to come out, and like people are dying, like multiple people die, and I love that scene.
It's interesting because you have the two guys who end up killing each other. Or no.
Yeah.
You have the Reverend goes to stop the doctor and then like kills him with like a cross on his head. I mean, how funny is that? Like, thank you, Tim Burton, for the Reverend killing some guy with a cross on his head.
Yeah.
Whacking him.
It's scenes like that in this movie, because there's multiple different scenes in this where it completely destroys the horror of the movie and makes it more comedic. Like, even the scene where the Headless Horseman goes and kills that entire family, like, they're having like the funniest sword fight with like sound effects like psh, psh, and they're fighting each other.
Shing! Shing!
Yeah. And then it kind of goes back to being scary, and then it goes back to being comedic. It's just like this weird back and forth play through the entire movie. Like, even the scene with the witch, right? Spooky, kind of scary, and then they reveal her face, and it's so CGI. It's just kind of comical in this day and age, but
it definitely had like Evil Dead vibes.
Yeah, her eyes popped out. It's like the scene. It's like an old cartoon where they see something like they love is really how their eyes pop out. Like, oh,
That's a very Tim Burton thing, though, too, because that was in Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and then in Beetlejuice too.
Yep.
Yeah, because the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, God, really? Did we really need that? And then as I got older, I was like, oh, wait, that's annoying as it kind of is. It's like, okay, that's a Tim Burton thing, too.
How amazing would this movie have been instead of her, like, summoning the horsemen to, like, go and kill people? Every time she needed to get rid of someone, she was just like, Beetlejuice, 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 and he would just appear. And just come out of the tree with a giant sandworm.
It's showtime.
Yeah. Imagine this movie, but instead of like, imagine all the characters in Beetlejuice, like Otho and Beetlejuice, and like Winona Ryder's character, I forget her name off the top of my head, and just replace them with the main characters in Sleepy Hollow. So Johnny Depp's now talking to Winona Ryder, and Beetlejuice is now the Headless Horseman. Otho.
Otho would be the one who the magistrate who keeps taking his wig off to like wipe his face off. So the movie comes to a conclusion. The stepmom is a witch. She's taken her revenge on everybody, ruined the Van Tassels and the Van Garretts and all their next of kin and anybody involved with the Van Garretts. She loses the head, and Ichabod and his crew give the head back to the horseman, and then the horseman becomes Christopher Walken, and then he collects his bride and has a lovingly look at his bride as she wakes up because she was knocked over the head by young Maspeth in a fight.
Man, he says the sweetest thing to her when she wakes up. This part of the movie is a thing that just blows my mind because Christopher Walken is a very well-known actor, a very good actor. He's done some great roles. Why did he take this role where he just screams? I feel like it's great that you had Christopher Walken in this role and he plays the Hessian. Awesome. You probably had to pay a shit ton of money to get him in this movie. And half of the movie he doesn't have a head, so why spend the money on Christopher Walken when he's not even going to do his typical Walken voice, you know? How funny would it be if he screamed like that, though? The way he talked. It was,
oh my God.
All right.
Tim Burton has got to have some kind of hold on people because once you're in a Tim Burton movie, you will always be in a Tim Burton movie.
I guess he was like probably top directors during this time, so maybe he was just really sought after to work with.
Maybe he like takes a drop of blood and puts it into a bag and he's like, you're mine now and you have to do my bidding.
Whenever I call on you,
yeah,
you shall come.
Yes. All right, so I think we should rate this on Flaming Pumpkins.
Flaming Pumpkins is perfect because it's Halloween.
Patrick, how many Flaming Pumpkins would you give this?
4, because I have a soft spot for this movie because I watched it. I was a big Tim Burton fan when I was a kid. I still am, but I love this movie and it's a lot of fun to watch. I tend to watch it once a year, but I always tend to watch it like April for some reason, which is because I watched this movie. I never watch it in October, which is dumb. But I'll give it 4 Flaming Pumpkins.
Holly?
I am going to give it 4 as well. This has been a favorite of mine since I had first seen it, and I grew up loving Tim Burton. He just always resonated with me, and just the the emotion that he puts into his movies, and they all become very personal. I hear people complain, oh, he's using the same actors in all of his movies, which is true. He does use the same people a lot, but I don't mind it because they have this connection with Tim Burton and they know what he's trying to achieve. I don't see it as a fault of his. I see it as a really good asset to his movies. He has these people who understand what he's trying to do, and it really comes through. So I like seeing familiar faces in his movies and just color palettes. And like I said before, he always uses Danny Elfman, and his music is like a beast on its own. It just, you can listen to a soundtrack and hear the story, and you don't really get that a lot with movie scores. So yeah, I'm going to give this one a 4.
Yeah, I'm going to just add a comment. Anytime I do a live production, I wish I could bring the same leads with me because I trust them. I know what they're like. They know me. I know them. There's little directing that I have to do. So I totally understand why Tim Burton works with a lot of the same people, you know. Mm-hmm. And I totally agree. Like, I'm totally okay with that because I think his films still come out the way he wants them to come out. Because it's his direction. It's not like, oh, I'm using this actor because of this actor. He's like, I'm using this actor because they fucking listen to what I want to do. And they do what I want them to do.
Yeah, and if you have trust with someone, you know, and you build that trust, like, I'm not going to a different doctor every time I go to. I trust the one I go
right.
I'm
yeah.
with.
Yeah.
I too will give this a 4 flaming pumpkin straight to the face. I enjoyed rewatching this more than I thought I would. And it's super spooky. I thought the whole vibe and the mood was perfect for Halloween. Even though this came out in November, end of November. It's such a good Halloween movie. It's a classic story. I'm so glad that Tim Burton ended up directing this story because it just was made to happen. It was so serendipitous that all these characters came together to put this together. And I think it was a really cool adaptation of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I liked Ichabod Crane as a detective. And a very much enjoyable Halloween watch. Thanks for listening. I hope everyone has a spooky Halloween and a safe holiday. Don't eat candy with razors in it.
Unless you're into that, then we're not here to stop or judge you.
Yeah. Oh, send us pictures of your Halloween costumes. Post it to Facebook and Instagram and tag us. We want to see your Halloween costumes.
Thank you so much for listening. This is our last episode of the season. If you've listened to the entire season, thank you, thank you, thank you. We'll be coming out with more episodes. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like.
Yeah, we can't change if you don't leave us feedback.
Yeah. But if you just, comment something that's just attacking us in a way, that's not feedback. That's bullying. And I'm not okay with that.
No, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
If you bully us, we're going to send the Headless Horseman your way.
Yep.
He rode a giant black steed named Daredevil. He was infamous for riding his horse hard into battle, chopping off heads at full gallop. He'd file his teeth down to sharp points to add to the ferocity of his appearance.